Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel here where we're gonna do something different. So, one of the big things that I've done in my time is make connections. And one of the connections I have is with a great friend of mine named Alex Goldschmidt, who is a commentator out of the UK who commentates for real life karting and has a very, very long resume. And of course, I met him through iRacing commentary, work with him in several different projects that I do. But he tends to be someone that I lean back on when it comes to motorsport things. He has a very, very vast knowledge of the history of Formula One, the history of a lot of things. So, me and him sat down last night after the news broke about Hamilton and Ferrari and just had a conversation for a while. It was kind of cool to just kind of record that with him. And we spent about an hour. We only planned on talking for about 10 minutes, and it ended up being about an hour of going back and forth and, getting his opinion on everything from Ecarb to Hamilton to Andretti and jumping around in that conversation. We talk about the driver market a little bit, and it really goes to show just how shocking this Hamilton news is. And it really goes to show just how much of a mix up that brings into this driver market. So I'm going to let you all listen to the conversation that I had with Alex for a while. Again, it's about an hour long, so just sit down, relax, enjoy. And then I'll jump back in after with a couple of thoughts, especially like this article that broke today from Lawrence Barretto on F1. And we'll kind of talk about a couple final thoughts and go from there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am joined by great friend, the aficionado of all things real and virtual, Alex Goldschmidt here, Mr. ADAC himself.
Yes,
So,
indeed. Yes, indeed.
first off, congrats on that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. For those that didn't already know, I dropped a bit of a bombshell on episode 44 of Commentator's Corner that I am now officially going to be the lead commentator for the ADAC Sim Racing Expo right through to 2027 when I hit the grand old age of half a century. No kidding there, folks. Even though I don't look my age, Brad.
You're not approaching half a century.
Yeah.
I don't believe that for a second.
46. I'll send you a picture of my driver's license after this.
Okay. I'll be looking for the photo and not just for having the photo of a UK driver's license. So,
Indeed.
But,
Indeed.
All right, Alex, I'm going to ask you the bombshell question here. We're gonna touch on the topic. There's a Seb Vettel quote that I've been floating around the past 12 hours, at least for me, 15 hours or so. Everyone's a Ferrari fan, even if they say they're not.
True.
And
as much as I am a big lover of the funny thing is that the team that I jumped into Formula One with was McLaren back in the Ayrton Senna days in the late 80s. And still seeing that scarlet red Cavallino Rampante, the prancing horse, that wonderful sounding Ferrari. I mean, you could not. You have to be a lover of all things Formula One. Yes, we have our allegiances and teams, but yeah, I love my Ferrari supercars. I had a Ferrari Testarossa on my wall as a poster car back in the day, alongside maybe say a Lamborghini Countach, a Ferrari 512, Berlinetta. For those that might remember Tom Selleck as Magnum PI, the 308 GTS, an iconic Ferrari road car. Yeah, I think that rings true in any sense when you relate it to Formula One. You look at the drivers that have raced there, such as Lauda, Villeneuve, Schumacher, Barrichello, Alonso, Vettel. Yeah, you can't help but admire the allure of the prancing horse.
So, all of that's to say, Ferrari have dropped the bombshell of 2025, and we're not even in the car reveals of 2024.
Yeah.
This is the part that throws me off. I'm talking about 2025, and we haven't even had a car reveal for 2024 yet. Haas's car reveal comes up this week, but we're not there yet, and we're already talking about 2025 contracts. Thoughts?
Silly season for 2025 is open season, big time. I mean, the funny thing is that I had a conversation You know, obviously being a few hours ahead, being closer to continental Europe, um, hearing the piece to camera that Rachel Brooks for Sky Sports F1 did, saying that, yep, it
Mhm.
has now been confirmed that Lewis Hamilton has exercised the release clause in his contract. He was due to stay with the team up until at least 2025 with an option for one, with a year fixed, an option for one, which was a bit like Fernando Alonso wanting to stay on an Alpine, and they gave him a 1+1, and he went to Aston Martin, got a 2-year deal on the card straight away. So, and I think it sort of has a shade of 2012, 2013, because I was on a podcast at the time, which is no longer around, called GP Focus. And I was asked the question, what is Hamilton going to do at Mercedes? And I said, if he gets the right team around him, if he gets the right engineer, the right mechanics, so number one mechanic, engineers, has the team that he can mold around him, he can do wonders. And look where he is now. He's the most successfully decorated driver when it comes to over 100 race wins, over 100 pole positions. He's equaled Michael Schumacher's 7 world titles, even though he was denied an 8th in 2021 in the battle between him and Max Verstappen. We won't talk about that because that is past tense, even though some people want to say he is an 8-time world champion. But you can't change history, folks. Max Verstappen is a
Yeah.
3-time and the reigning defending world champion who's going to be running the number one for the 3rd year in a row on his Red Bull racing car this year. I think it's more about not just trying to go for an 8th world title for Lewis. He's known to drive a lot of Ferraris as personal cars that he's bought
Mhm.
with the money that he's earned. He's been a great ambassador for Mercedes, but I think the allure of racing with Ferrari, even if he doesn't win that 8th title, I think for me would be the perfect way to see out his career. Now, I'm interested to see how long the multi-year deal is for, because Lewis Hamilton this year turns 40. That will be 2 of our
Yep.
current Formula One drivers, including Fernando Alonso, 2005 2006 world champion, that will be over 40. The most senior driver previous to that, Kimi Raikkonen, before he retired.
Yeah. I have a lot of questions that come to mind when I look at this Lewis Hamilton deal.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is Lewis had just announced a few months ago that he was sticking with Mercedes. Mercedes made a big deal about Lewis Hamilton staying. Lewis has been on the record saying, I want to end my career at Mercedes. Mercedes is my home. So what changed? What happened to make Lewis go, nope, this isn't it. I'm exercising my contract out?
Well, he's had a change in management. He's now going back with the man that helped him to instigate Project 44. They've now reunited. So, and the thing is that the team that he was with previously were very, very instrumental in helping Lewis promote all these different new opportunities, such as the Lewis Hamilton Foundation, going to Extreme E with X44, diversifying his power as a global superstar. Forget Formula One, you have to look at the superstar nature of what Lewis Hamilton has been able to do. He's been a changing force in terms of representation.
Mm-hmm.
Very vocal about Black Lives Matter. Obviously, the LGBTQIA plus part of the community, trying to make people aware, not ramming it down their throats, but making people aware. But
Yep.
then you don't get an opportunity that comes along unless Ferrari have gone, we're going to throw everything at Lewis Hamilton to get him with us. And he did actually have a sit down with John Elkann, CEO of Ferrari, who currently heads up the group, and said, and there must have been something that twigged with Lewis that the allure of Ferrari, okay, Mercedes, a top tier motorsport and automotive company. You cannot
Yep.
deny that. The
Yep.
most the most dominant force in the hybrid era of Formula One up until the end of the 2020 season. But with that, does I'm wondering what is Lewis's decision? Because yes, Ferrari could throw a, a blank checkbook at him, say the world is yours with us. But I think when you look at who, as I said, the names that I mentioned that have raced with Ferrari, I think Lewis is probably at that point where I'm now having to think about the latter phase of my career, my halcyon years in Formula One.
Hmm.
He has adjusted his lifestyle to be so competitive in Formula One, going completely plant based. Having the likes of Angela Cullen, who was with him for years, she was his
Yep.
right hand woman, was there every single race for multiple years with Mercedes, and then decided to amicably go their own way. But I think it's what could the legacy be that Hamilton writes with Ferrari? That is the key question that would have been asked of Lewis when he was having that sit down with John Elkann. And you look at the lineup for 2025. Carlos Sainz out. Now this is where the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle will start to fall into place.
Yep.
And I see, of course, the Sainz family very much linked with Audi. What has Carlos Sainz Sr. just done? Won his fourth Dakar. Audi are now withdrawing from the Dakar. They are focusing completely on becoming a manufacturer team in Formula One in 2026. Okay, developments of Neuberg and Dono are happening. I very much think that at the end of 2024, Sainz will go to Sauber. The reason being is that at the end of that year, Audi and the four rings of Ingolstadt will come into the fray. And what I would say is that with regards to Sainz, you would then have a year of familiarization to get to know the team, get to understand the
Yep.
Audi way of thinking, which he will have already been told by his old man. But that could be a very, very good way for Carlos to, okay, have a year of pain, but then a long-term gain with Audi because they have pumped in a lot of money. But they are given a cost cap every single year on how much they can use to develop the car and the powertrain for 2026. And I think that could be a very, very good one. Who would I like to see partnering George Russell at Mercedes Benz? I'd like to see Alex Albon have that opportunity. He's now got familiarization. He's the team leader at Williams. Williams are now moving upwards. Of course, they've got James Vowles, ex Mercedes, uh, head strategist, now as the team principal. I think there could be some signs of maybe possibly Logan Sargent if he manages to have a better year. First American rookie for a very, very long time to be in the sport and to now be in his second year. I think it was really, really good that Williams gave him another opportunity to prove himself.
Yep.
And you don't want to have inconsistent driver moves whereby you're completely changing the dynamic of the team. So I think this could be, Alex Albon has been like a phoenix rising from the ashes, goes to Toro Rosso, gets bumped up to replace Daniel Kvyat, then has a mare in his first full season, gets put down in the boonies, goes to DTM, comes back with a vengeance, gets signed by Williams, and he's really, really showcased that he has really matured as a driver. So I'd love to see Alex Albon in there. People are going to be crying out for Mick Schumacher, of course, yes. That had a familiarization, but you know what? I think Mick is probably going to be going. He's signed with Alpine for the World Endurance Championship for this year. And I think that could be a very, very good career move where you've seen drivers who are related to other drivers that have raced in Formula One, like say the Barrichello family. Eduardo's running in Stock Car Pro Series alongside his dad as his teammate. Younger brother Fernando's racing in Spanish F4 and Porsche Carrera Cup Brazil. So I think it won't be a bad idea to keep Mick Schumacher as the reserve driver.
Hmm.
Carlos Sainz, as I said, but then we got obviously the other big question is who is going to partner Max at Red Bull Racing once Checo goes at the end of 24. That's going to be quite interesting, I think.
Yeah, I there's so many moves in the drivers market, and this just opens things up because the thing is, like you mentioned, Checo contract. I don't think Checo will get re-signed by Red Bull based on his performances, unless he really steps it up in 2024. And then you kind of get in that situation of, who's going to go where, who's going to do what. Are they going to move Daniel Ricciardo up into that seat?
I
If
don't
they
think
don't
so.
move Danny Rick
I
up,
don't think so.
then
I don't think so.
I don't either.
As much as I would love to see that happen, Racing Bulls is no longer going to be the sister team. It's its own. There has been a lot of talk, especially from Zach Brown, and he said, "Why the hell have Red Bull got two teams?" And you can understand because then Red Bull, in some ways, even though they've got two separate factories, one in Faenza for Visa, Cash App, Red Bull, Racing Bulls. I'll just call them V Carb, just to make them sound like a bleeding energy drink. And then you got
Just
the
call him Toro Rosso.
yeah.
Everyone
No,
knows him as Toro Rosso.
I'll just call them the BS squad.
Yeah,
Sounds
there it
about
is.
right. But yeah, I think as much as I would love to see Danny Rick in that second seat, which would be great for Red Bull, but then you then have to move Liam Lawson alongside Yuki. But then it also depends on when Honda's coming in with Aston Martin for the
Yeah.
2026 regulations. So I think as long as the HRC power, the IP of the Honda Racing Corporation power units are still being used by Red Bull until Ford Performance comes in as the official electrical technology supplier for Red Bull Racing in 2026. I
Hmm.
have a feeling that Aston Martin might be right in signing Sonoda to them because he'll have experience with Honda. It's good for
Yep.
the Japanese driver market in some respects because Sonoda has improved year on year. Okay, he still has his dropping of F bombs on radio chatter, but he's a great character. He's very much a very different cut of the cloth in comparison with, like, say, Kamui Kobayashi, who was Mr. Smiley. Sonoda is a personality, and he has his own style. So I think Aston Martin would be wise to get rid of Lance Stroll and put in Yuki Tsunoda. If Fernando Alonso is still around by then, I will be greatly impressed because that man, I think, could probably compete until he's in his late 40s before he retires. He trains incredibly hard. I mean, the fitness that some of these athletes put themselves through these days, Brad, is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it's crazy to me to think that Fernando is the age he is and still honestly near the peak of his game. He's very impressive to watch through and see. Kind of looking at it, you get this very messy situation that's going to come up, and it makes me excited for Formula One again to a degree. Especially after the disappointment, in my opinion, of the Andretti news.
Mm.
it it really it gets me excited because it's going to be that big mix up because things have felt stale for a couple years now in F1. It's felt very just bland.
I would have loved to have seen 11th team in Formula One. Forget FOM, forget the prize split between the teams and everything. Look, FOM is owned by Liberty Media, which is worth like what? At least $15 billion. To not have
Yep.
Andretti and Caddy on the grid, I think is a big
Yep.
misjustice. And I'll be completely honest with you, the only word that Mario Andretti, who's a former Formula One champion for goodness sake, disappointed. And I know for a fact that's behind closed doors. That man is absolutely red-faced with embarrassment that the fact that Stefano Domenicali and the bods at Liberty Media have said no, but there's an opportunity for 2028. That's 4 years away.
It,
It
and
just
don't forget, they said that 2028 is only an option because of GM. They said that they will consider a 2028 move with General Motors backing. It would change their perspective on things. That's the part that gets me. It's not
yeah,
it it's a money game.
it's money and it's political. Because the teams, the 10 teams, are the ones that are saying, yeah, we don't want Andretti. I think, like, Zach Brown, who is from the US anyway, a big supporter of the sport, I'm sure that he's like thinking, damn, I would have loved to have Andretti in. And of course, what were they going to do? They were probably going to be the second customer, the next customer team from Renault and rebadge it as
Yep.
a Cadillac unit. Okay, understandable. But the thing is that Michael and the entire team at Andretti Global did everything that was asked of them and more. Yes, sometimes you have to be a little bit bullish to get what you want, but you cannot deny the credentials of that outfit. Multi-time IndyCar Series champions, multi-time Indy 500 winners, Season 9 Formula E champions with Jake Dennis just this, past summer. They're with Walkinshaw Andretti United in Australian supercars. So for
Mm-hmm.
me, you have got one of the biggest motorsport powerhouses, all-round powerhouses, I might add. A Ferrari, okay, yes, you've won Le Mans for the first time in God knows how many years. You've been around since day one of Formula One, but the reach that the Andretti Global mark cannot be denied. And it would have been a win-win for everybody. You would have had so many more North American and Canadian viewers cheering on a team of a manufacturer and also a motorsport entity that represents North America and Canada in the right way
Yep.
globally. It would have been a win-win. Social media, viewership, potential for more sponsors coming in for Formula One. And I'm not talking European, Australasian, or Asian. I'm talking US, I'm talking Canada. They would probably have sponsors knocking down their doors saying, we want a piece of this as well. And by doing that, I think that Formula One, I have to say it, they have. It's like trying to swing for a home run, and how hard can you miss that ball? They've struck out
Yeah.
in the bottom of the ninth, using a baseball terminology here, Brad. I think it is a real shame. And the way that Andretti have responded on their statement saying that we do not entirely agree. I think that the way that they have gone about it, they have not they haven't fired a warning shot across the bow. What they have done is that they have said, we agree to disagree with you, Formula One. Why have we been put through all this process and then been, in want of a better term, they've been given the bird, so to speak.
Yep.
That's what's happened. And as much as I love Formula One, I really would have loved to have seen a new team come in, and it would have been like a breath of fresh air. That could have given opportunity to other drivers. Say Colton Herta. There was a lot of talk about Colton possibly coming in with what was Scuderia AlphaTauri, now
Mm-hmm.
the BST, as we're going to call them. Um, I think there would have been an opportunity to maybe get a couple of US drivers who were known quantities in IndyCar in the US that would have been possibly, we might have even seen a possibility of Alexander Rossi coming back. And he's an Indy 500 winner at the Brickyard. Colton
Yep.
Herta is one of the youngest, brightest stars in that championship. I mean, who's not to say that if if Andretti managed to master a move saying Joseph Newgarden gets pulled from Penske to Andretti in Formula One, who would have seen that? There would be so many opportunities for drivers that a lot of us follow in the US, um, and get them in the sport. That would have been great for Liberty Media's power in terms of continuing to make it the Super Bowl event, which is what they have been doing a lot of these events, like say Miami, which was a big hit. Las Vegas,
Yep.
the less said about that, the better. Unfortunately, with what havoc it caused on the Sunset Strip, um,
Yeah.
and it was going to be a swing or a miss, and unfortunately, it was a little bit of a miss
Hmm.
for FOM. If I'm completely honest with you, um, but I think that Andretti not coming into Formula One now, 2026, it's what could have been. And I think there could be not some repercussions, but I think Andretti will be challenging Formula One and saying, well, you need to tell us exactly why. You can't just get, if they've just said to him, here's a two-page A4 document on why we've decided not to allow you to come in 2026.
Hmm.
I think Michael will continue to push those buttons like he has done the last couple of years. And you know for a fact that his old man would rather be around to see that day when an Andretti Autosport car is on the grid in Formula One. It's
Yep.
been over 50 years. What is it? 52 years since Mario Andretti won his title with Lotus back in 1972. There's uh, there's a lot at stake here, and FOM I think have put a little bit of egg on their face. Unfortunately, a lot of fans have been wanting to see more than 20 cars on the grid. Yes,
Yep.
everyone's in it for themselves. It's all about the Benjamins, but you cannot deny that there'll be a point when Michael and the team at Andretti Global will see that happen. And I will be a very, very happy man if I see a Sky Sports F1 broadcast and you see Michael and Mario standing side by side in front of one of their cars on the grid in Formula One. Considering they both raced in it, Michael didn't have the best run of luck with his time at McLaren. Mario had championship success and battled for a number of years for the title, especially with racing with the late Colin Chapman at Lotus. It's a shame because it really could have opened up an even bigger fan base and probably would have given Netflix something even more interesting to do to find out about the Andretti dynasty and educate the new fans that are coming through. That's what I think it is. It is a bit of a swing and a miss on FOM not letting Andretti come in on the 2026 regs, to be honest.
Yep. I think one of the interesting things for me with Andretti was in their statement, they said that they continue to move forward.
Hmm.
So that for me is a signal that this is not done.
Yeah.
This conversation of Andretti is not over. And as you said, they're going to push buttons. They're going to keep trying to move forward. I'm not discounting Andretti in 2025. I am not, because the thing is, they have the FIA approval. They have the sporting license. It's the commercial side. So the thing is, if you have the license there and from the sporting delegate body saying there's this, what, like, it becomes a weird question of, okay, so you can but you can't, like, and I think that's the confusion for a lot of people, myself included, because what if they do roll up and they say, hey, we've got the FIA, approval for a team, like, we're here, we're gonna race. What does Formula One and Liberty Media do? Do they just not broadcast their cars at all, like act like they don't exist?
Well, you've also got to look at it possible team purchase on the cards. There's been rumours about Alpine, and you know when Renault came back under Cyril Abiteboul, who's now running Hyundai Motorsports efforts in the World Rally Championship. They brought in Otmar Safnauer. He got the can. Alpine is, I think, it's great that we've got both our French drivers in there, Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly. It's great for them to
Hmm.
be in the team. But I think that Alpine are the team that could possibly give that springboard to Michael and the team at Andretti Global to have an entry. Thereby, they could say to Renault, "We want you to supply the engines. We'll pay for those engines," and they then take over. That's a possibility. But then you've got to look into the fact of Andretti have been concentrating on the 2026 regs. So they come in at 25. That's a transitional year that they probably want to do without. So I don't think 2025 is the best option for Andretti. I would think that if Alpine decide that they are going to call it quits in Formula One, because Alpine is now going fully electric, very much like
Hmm.
Renault, of course, headed up by Chairman Luca De Meo, who was formerly with Audi and the Volkswagen Group for quite a time. You have to look at it from this perspective that Alpine could say, well, if by the end of the 2025 season we're not going to get anywhere, what's the point in staying in the sport? So that could be the inroad. So if Alpine say we want out, Andretti could say, well, hey, we're here, we're ready. And they will be working, because obviously with the fact of having a power unit supplier, okay, they could do it one of two ways. They could say that it could be Andretti Renault for the first 2 years, hypothetically, with
Right.
Cadillac as a title sponsor. So in some respects, that would be a conflict of interest for GM straight away. But you would then have to do, it's like when Renault jumped out of the sport and the engines were rechristened Mechachrome in Formula One. You could have a power unit with a different name, still provided by the original supplier, but run it under a different name so there is no branding conflict of interest. So you could still have it as Andretti Cadillac powered by, let's say, Mechachrome engines, for instance. That wouldn't.
Okay.
That's something that's been done before in Formula One, where engines have been rechristened, but everyone knew it's still a Renault underneath. But then it comes down to intellectual property. Would Renault be willing to do that? Probably not, because they've put so much money into it. A very Chatillon, which is their engine, their power unit
Yeah.
production plant. So it could be the case that you can have it as a branding exercise for Cadillac, but if they have to bite the bullet and go with an engine, then the engine is going to have to be very much under a different name, like with Red Bull and Tag Heuer, for
Yep.
instance. So there are ways in which I think that Michael would be able to facilitate an entry in 2026. But if they have their own power unit that they've been developing, which very much could be the case, they could bring it in as an Andretti power unit. And then when GM comes on board for 2028, bang, there's your possible solution. But that depends on Andretti. If Andretti have been going with Renault power units, they're between a rock and a hard place in 2026, I feel. But that transitional year from 25 to 26, Brad, Andretti won't want it. They'll go, we will just be putting 150 million US dollars into running a team in a car, and we're not competitive. They want to be out of the blocks flying, 100%. That is what Andretti does, and Andretti does best.
Yeah, I'm thinking of all my time at the Rolex and how many times I heard Andretti's name, and it's hundreds and hundreds of times across a weekend that I heard Andretti Motorsports. So it really is a name that carries a powerhouse, and yeah, it's a fumble by Formula One to not
Mm-hmm.
bring Andretti on, and it's a little bit of a slap in the face for their statement because The part that I'm hung up on is that they said Andretti doesn't bring anything to F1. F1 would bring more recognition to Andretti, which yeah, I'm not even going to start.
I,
We'll be here all night.
I could go to town on that one, but all I'm going to say is, swing and a miss, you're out. You know, it was the. I'm gonna. Let me chime in for a couple of minutes on this statement.
I'll enjoy this.
Formula One has got it twisted, 100%. Everyone who knows not just Formula One, but like when you look at the alliances that they've made, of course, Wayne Taylor Racing with Andretti Autosport, with the Acuras in GTPs, you know, you can't you can't not entertain an entity like Andretti. And for Formula One to come out with a statement like that, no, Andretti would bring the fans to you. 100%. I don't care which organisation it is. I just really respect the Andretti family. And the thing is, by this to happen, and by the way that Formula One have just basically said no, and have said something that I think is completely hypocritical. Formula One, you didn't bring the fans to Vegas. You actually caused more problems for yourselves than anything else. Now you're causing a further problem by not expanding the grid. I want to see it when we've got 26, 30 cars on a Formula One grid. I want to see that. I mean, it's like when we had Hispania Racing Team, we had Manor F1, and then we had Team Lotus, which then eventually became Caterham. But that was another 6 cars on the grid. And you had all the big teams. You had McLaren, you had Mercedes, you had Ferrari, you had Force India back in the day. You had Toyota. You had all these big players. And we had 25 cars on the grid. I mean, that's why I would love to see Andretti on the grid, because it would bring a breath of fresh air. And that's what Formula One needs. We don't need all these changes in format to sprint and then fix setup, park ferme BS. We just need it when we need another team to ignite the spark underneath Formula One's backside and get the fans in. Like, literally, it would be like a wave of change. And I think a lot of the drivers are probably thinking, I can't believe they did that. I would imagine there's probably going to be a chat between all the drivers, because George Russell, being one of the directors of the Grand Prix Drivers Association, the GPDA, they must be thinking, some of the drivers might be saying, yeah, well, it's a real shame Andretti's not coming in, and being like, yeah, I would have loved to have had some other competition. So yeah, that's my take on it, and that's all I'm going to say about that, because I think it's always difficult to read between the lines with Formula One, because it's not always quite clear. Whereas with Andretti and Michael, he knew exactly where he stood, exactly what stance he was taking. He was calling a spade, and that's why I respect the Andretti family. They don't give you any BS.
Yep. It's circling back around though, just overarching look. So we're not even in 2024 yet, and the conversation is going to 2025, 2026, and eventually 2028 between Andretti, GM, Cadillac, and even driver contracts. What's going to become of the 2024 season? We already know we have 2 drivers without seats. We already know we have empty seats available going into the season. So, what as a driver are they going to look at for 2024? What's going to be their plan?
I think what they need to look for is, firstly, somewhere where they can be stable. We've already got pairings already sorted. I mean, we've got Russell and Hamilton, we've got Leclerc and Sainz. So that's Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren. Very, very shrewd decision by Zach Brown. 3-year extension until the end of 2026 for Oscar Piastri. Multi-year deal now signed for Lando Norris, taking him into the 2026 era of regulations. So that is very, very shrewd. Haas, Komatsu's got a big job. He's got big shoes to fill. He said he's not going to be a Gunter Steiner. Going to miss that guy in the paddock. Especially with when he said he does not fox smash my door when he relates to Kevin Magnussen back in Drive to Survive. I had to use the vernacular on that one, folks. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is Haas have now had Hulk and K Mag in for a couple of seasons now. By the end of this year, performance. That's going to be the key thing for Gene Haas. Gunter was asking for more money. Gene said, "Look, I've already, my bank balance has already been emptied several hundred million over the past few years. You guys need to work on it." That's going to be crucial. Ricardo only in for 1 year, Racing Bulls. Tsunoda, I'm not too sure how long his contract's going on for. Sargent and Albon, another one at Williams. I think there's going to be an opportunity at the end of 2024 to bring in Kimi Antonelli, which Mercedes, who is a bright talent. Very, for such a young kid from Italy, could he be the driver that Formula One needs to eventually go to one of the top teams? But it won't be with Ferrari. Toto Wolff has got plans for that boy. Then you look at Alpine. Could the writing be on the wall? Could Luca De Meo decide, right, we're going to pull the plug and we're going to do it for the next set of regs? So they might decide, let's can it by the end of 2025 and we're out. Then you've got to think of what's going to happen to Ocon and Gasly. I think Perez, he's now got a stake in an E1 team, the electric powerboat series that's starting this weekend in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia.
Mm-hmm.
I think he'll be more focused on that than worrying about whether he's going to beat Max Verstappen or not in the Red Bull car, which won't happen. Guaranteed. He'll
Nope.
just be a rear gunner. Valtteri Bottas is another one. Could his time be coming to an end, or could he be staying until the Audi era? Then you got to look at Guan Yu Zhou, the only Chinese driver ever to make it into Formula One. I think for the Asia side of things, not a bad thing to have someone, who is improving. He's getting better and better. The first half of his first season in Formula One, he impressed everybody. He got points on debut. I think he still has a little bit of learning to do. Logan Sargent, what's his future in Formula One? That's going to be
Mm-hmm.
dependent on Williams. You've got a few drivers in the Williams Academy, the Williams Junior program. Will Jamie Chadwick ever get a chance? Who knows? But yeah, I think this is going to be the most difficult, silly season to predict unless you're listening to Eddie Jordan. And sometimes when Eddie Jordan says something, 85% of the time it happens. But I think that coming to Lewis, if he doesn't take the jump to Ferrari soon, he'll regret it. And I don't think it's about the accolades. You look at Mika Salo, who's raced there, Stefan Johansson, Eddie Irvine. I could go on with a long list of names. Jody Scheckter, 1979 Formula One world champion, the only driver, I think, from South Africa that has won a championship in Formula One. You look at the names that have come through those doors, and yeah, Sky Sports News' Craig Slater said Hamilton is taking a calculated risk. But he's got to look at it. It's not about what the fans want. Sometimes these drivers are very selfish. The minute you put them behind the wheel of a car,
Yep.
100% selfish. And the contract extension last August was due to take Lewis to the eve of his 41st birthday. And, he'd already said in the past that he owns Ferrari road cars, and he previously made it clear that he would be content were his record-breaking career to end without driving in motorsport's most famous shade of red. But I think he's got an opportunity here to prove himself, to go into a new challenge. And that's what he likes. And even at his age, being nearly 40, I think it could be something special. Even if it's the swan song of his career, he gets to the end of however long the multi-year deal is. We don't obviously know. Of course, that will come out in due course through Ferrari's press department. But I think it's really exciting that we're going to see a completely different lineup. We're going to get the youthful exuberance and the want to become a world champion in the form of Charles Leclerc. But then we got the man that's done it, who's been there, got the T-shirt, got the USB-C stick and the and the iPod along with it for the ride, and that I think could really help Ferrari move forward. Because what we've got to remember, folks, is that these drivers didn't get to where they are now by cutting corners. No, taking risks. Parents working 2 to 3 jobs to give them the opportunity, like, say, Anthony Hamilton, Lewis's dad, worked 3 jobs. People saying, yeah, but he was signed by McLaren. Yeah, because the fact that Lewis Hamilton confidently walked up to Ron Dennis, said, one day I'm going to drive for you. In 2007, that happened. And everyone was really sort of putting Lewis down in 2012 when he was announced to move to Mercedes. And he proved everybody wrong. I'd love to see if lightning strikes twice with Hamilton in scarlet red.
You know, it gives me similar thoughts to when Seb left Red Bull and went to Ferrari, because Seb said, yes, I've won championships, but the dream is to win in Ferrari.
Mhm.
And we talked about it, a while ago. It's the lure of that Ferrari red that I think brings it on. And it's going to be a challenge, because the thing is, Ferrari's been there, but they haven't.
Yeah.
In terms of competitiveness. Now, granted, Ferrari is the only team that beat Red Bull. It was Singapore, but they're the only team that had a win last season other than a Red Bull car.
Yeah.
So there has to be something there.
I think Lewis probably sees something, and it's actually a really good point about Damon. I'm actually going to say what Karun Chandok and Damon Hill were asked when they were asked about it. And Karun went, somehow, somewhere, he's either lost confidence in the Mercedes project and doesn't believe they can give him a chance to fight Max, or it's just the romantic lure of driving in Ferrari red. But then 1996 Formula One world champion Damon Hill went, Lewis has a racer's instinct as to which way the wind is blowing. And I like that analogy. And I think he might have just pulled a blinder, just like he did when he left McLaren and went to Mercedes. So, like I said, it could be. My dad's really excited about this. He says, I never thought I'd see the day that Lewis Hamilton would turn to the colours of the prancing horse. And I said, Dad, it had been rumoured for. This hasn't been the first time that it was rumoured. It was rumoured a few years back.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you have a man who's at the peak of his powers, and even though Mercedes, granted, have had a tough time, very reminiscent of Red Bull's first few years in the power unit era, anyone might remember. Spark plug lead popped off of Sebastian Vettel's car at the Australian Grand Prix in the first ever hybrid era race of Formula One in 2014. And that was when Red Bull and Renault, their relationship went south, and it went south very publicly between comments with Christian Horner and Cyril Abiteboul at the time. So, yeah, as much as I'm looking forward to launch season with all the respective cars, I'm now looking forward to seeing the official first ever reveal at Fiorano, just outside of Maranello, when we see Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton in the red of Ferrari. And also, you got to understand that I think the last person from the UK. I mean, I'm just going to have a look at Ferrari's list of drivers because it has been an incredibly long time since who has actually been racing for
I'm
for
trying to think.
Ferrari. I'm going to look on Wikipedia for this because I should have prepared this earlier. Um,
It's also what time in the morning for you, so I'll give you a break on a Wikipedia
4:30 in the
Google.
morning, but you know what? I don't really care. I don't really care. So let's look at it from this perspective. Just gonna have a look now. Da, 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 da. It's quite.
Lengthy list.
I'm trying to find the list. That's the first thing.
Ah,
Last UK Ferrari driver F1. Let's have a look at that. Eddie Irvine was the last driver from the UK because he's from Northern Ireland, not Ireland. 20. By the time that Lewis gets behind the wheel of whatever they're going to call their Scuderia Ferrari car that year, 22 years by the time that Lewis leaves
wow.
Merck and goes to Ferrari. And also, there's another bit of UK history with Ferrari that Nigel Mansell, Il Leone, number 5, was the last ever person to be personally selected by Il
Hmm.
Commendatore to race for Ferrari. And that was just before, I think it was when Nigel decided to, first of all, retire from Williams. Ferrari wanted him. Enzo Ferrari called him in and said, "Yeah, I want to sign you as a driver." Then, 1990, Mansell actually tried to retire for the first time. Williams got him back. And then 91 and 92, the rest is history, especially with the FW14B. Yeah, so yeah, you look at not many Brits, and I think Lewis will get a completely different fan base with the Tifosi, but I think there'll be a lot more red in the grandstands, a bit like Valentino Rossi in his MotoGP days. We'll see from 2025 onwards. And there's a lot of Mercedes fans out there in social media who said, "I didn't expect this. I'm really, really devastated." It is what it is. Drivers move on. You
Yep.
can't deny the pulling power of a certain Lewis Hamilton. But my big question is, who thinks he's going to learn Italian? Is he going to do it over Kimi? Said, I didn't learn I remember that interview between Warbucks and Kimi Raikkonen when he said, "Did you learn the language?" "No, I didn't." Like that, started laughing.
No.
Um, but yeah, I think launch season. I think now we're going to see the pieces fall into place, and the team that snoozes loses when it comes to the drivers' market. But I think Sauber will have already been in discussions ahead of
Yeah.
time. If Carlos already knew that he was going,
Which apparently they knew for several weeks based on reports. This is not. This was in the pipeline. I don't think it was supposed to be announced like this, but apparently this has been known for several weeks now.
maybe Ferrari wanted to get the biggest transfer news on the transfer day deadline. But the thing is, for it to have already been dealt with behind closed doors,
Mm-hmm.
it's past tense. It's past 8. It's water under the bridge. So I'm going to be really excited what kind of dynamic we're going to see. Of course, Lewis lives in Monaco. Charles is a Monaco citizen and resident. So they're going to get on like a house on fire, 100%. But then it's also about how can Charles learn from Lewis to become the world champion that he wants to be? And there'll be a lot that, yeah, Lewis could have thought, yeah, I could see out my days at Mercedes, but hang on, the allure of that red, yeah, they might be hitting him with like a 50 million a year contract plus bonuses or plus endorsements or whatever. You just don't know, and
Hmm.
there's always a lot of political loopholes that these drivers have to get through in terms of contract negotiations, such as negotiating fees, you know, and yeah, I think Ferrari will have definitely emptied the piggy bank quite a bit to get hold of Lewis.
Yep.
And, for him to say that when you have a man, one of your biggest rivals, who actually drives your cars, not the cars for the brand that he races for, that also is a little bit of a telltale sign between the lines that I love my Mercs, but Ferraris, it's nothing like a Ferrari on the road.
Yeah. It's it's all shaping up to be really fun. I think car launch season is going to be fun, and I think round one press conferences are going to be very, very nice. I hope whoever gets to ask that first question to either Lewis or Carlos or Charles, I hope they bring their A game.
I'm sure that the first press conference will be Carlos Sainz, Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, Fred Vasseur, and Toto Wolff.
Please,
You,
please.
you know, you know what was even funnier about the fact that when the team were, and there's actually a couple of interesting facts, folks, that Toto Wolff actually informed the team he was not on site at Brackley. He was out. He was at home. But credit where credit is due, that Lewis took a lot of the team out paintballing and then broke the news to him. Said, "Guys, I can let you know now. I wanted us to have this time together." And then he basically said, "I'm leaving the team at the end of next year or this year." And for him to do that shows the character of the man. People have always lauded him for his dress sense, but that man has a 100% heart of gold. He is a
Yep.
marketer's dream. Okay, yes, his fashion sense is out there and then some, but he comes across as a very, very genuine person. That's all I can say. And to have that kind of person in the Ferrari team, you also have to look at the link he has with Fred Vasseur. Fred Vasseur ran him in ART in his GP2 days when Lewis took the title in 2006 before he jumped up to McLaren. So, again, you've got two former ART Grand Prix drivers under the former boss in Ferrari. How's that for a combination and a half on that front?
It's Fred Vasseur has been pulling off some of the best grabs as Ferrari team principal, and it I do think we're in for the rejuvenation and the refresh of Ferrari. I think Ferrari are in for a good, well needed rebound in Formula One.
It's about time. They really, really need it. I think, you know, Carlos has said that he's going to put everything into this year. And you know what? The best thing for him to do is carry on like nothing's happened. Of course, yeah, there's going to be questions asked in press conferences, but I think Carlos has been a really, really good fit for Ferrari. It is a shame that he is going. 100% a shame. If you could have three Ferrari cars and you had Hamilton, Sainz, and Leclerc, oh, buddy, that would be an absolute corker. But yeah, we don't have
Oh
that. We don't
man.
have that. But yeah, I think Carlos will be proving a point saying Ferrari did wrong by me, as if to say.
Yep.
And his contract talks were delayed because of John Elkann and the team speaking with Lewis. And it has to be, I think, Fred, very much like Ross Brawn with bringing Lewis over to Mercedes. The same can be said of Fred Vasseur pulling him from Mercedes to Ferrari.
It's gonna be a good time, but we got to get through car launches first. So just a few days away, a couple weeks away, and then all the launches are through. We're about a month until cars are back on track, so lots to be seen in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I think there might be opportunities for us to have a few more discussions about F1 2024 and give you folks our 2 cents, our take on it. So yeah, uh, bring it on.
All right, so first off, a huge thank you goes to Alex for deciding 4:30 in the morning was a good time to sit and talk about things Formula One for way longer than we planned on. So a huge thank you to him, of course. Now, this statement got released because news in motorsports moves fast. Andretti Cadillac released this statement about the conversation and the statement from Formula One Media, which I covered in yesterday's video. If you haven't seen that, just jump back and watch yesterday's video. Andretti Cadillac said the preferred year was indicated as 2025, and there was no limitation of 25 or 26, and they've been operating with 26 as the year of entry. So, goes to show me that the whole system is a mess. Second, they weren't aware that the meeting was extended from Formula One management. Now, from what I've read and what I understand, that is because a staffer sent an invite out and it went to junk mail because it went from a staff member, Formula One management. So do with that information what you will. And I think the other big thing of note, our work continues at pace. We have not heard the end of Andretti Cadillac. Now, the other thing I want to talk about, I hold no grudge. Wolff on Hamilton's Ferrari move. Toto Wolff came out and said, I hold no grudge. And says that he decided this week and they had a conversation, that's where it is. So, like, here's the thing. What has happened in the background to make Lewis Hamilton move to Ferrari from Mercedes, where he said he wanted his home to be? So, like, and then he even said, I didn't try to convince him otherwise. Like, I don't know. I just don't get it. There's so many questions with it, but of course, I'm gonna kind of keep my eyes on it, and I think everyone will, especially now that car launches have came out. Of course, Haas launching their car today, which is I can't be excited for it. They've already said they're gonna be last on the grid, so why are we excited for it? I'm not. But keep your eyes glued to a lot of this motorsport news that's coming out, and of course, so many other motorsport disciplines that have big news going right now. But the news has been in Formula One lately, so that says a lot about Formula One in and of itself. But stick around, subscribe to the channel, and of course, as more news drops, I will bring it to you as I can.